Exciting.
All right. Did it say that I started recording?
Yes, it did.
Make sure. Okay, perfect. Well, welcome everybody. This is actually our final world language project team meeting. So it's an exciting night. Welcome, and I'm going to let Toshiko kick it off for us.
Are you going to advance the slides?
Oh, sure.
Let's see. Great. So thank you so much for being here. As Carol mentioned, this is our final meeting, and we're really excited because we do have quorum, and we're going to be able to get a vote in on all of the curriculum materials that we're going to present to you today. So anyway, thank you and welcome. We are very appreciative of your time. This is our agenda that we're going to try to get to today, and we don't think that it's going to take a full 2 hours. We're going to try our best to do this within an hour so we can get you back with your families. But we're going to just review some of the work that we've done over the course of the last couple of years, and then talk a bit about the cadre conclusions. And then you are going to vote on the curriculum we want for each of the languages. And then we'll talk a bit about next steps. As always, we want to acknowledge the land that we're on. So thank you for acknowledging with us today that the Tualatin Kalapuya people were the original caretakers of the lands where we teach and learn. We are reminded of the cultural and linguistic history and diversity of our region and our world, and we keep this awareness present as we engage in this work. And as always, throughout this whole process, we have been putting this slide up throughout the cadre meetings as well as the project team meetings, always centering equity in our decisions and just making sure that we ask ourselves, these 4 questions as we're deciding on the curriculum for world language. Whose voice is or isn't represented? Who does this decision benefit or burden? Is it in alignment with the BSD equity policy? And then also talking about or thinking about the closing and the widening of the access opportunity and expectation gaps. Okay, and I'm going to walk us through kind of where we've been. So I'm going to open it in a new tab here. All right, hopefully that's easy enough to see. All right, so we started in June of 2021, formed our cadre, had our world language cadre charge to develop best practices, standards, and the position paper. There was an initial school board presentation to present the project team charge to the board members and community. Our cadre work then began and continued as we were working on the best practices and position paper. And then the project team was formed, including all of you, students, teachers, community members, administrators, and other stakeholders. Our cadre work continued looking at materials and meeting with vendors. We completed curriculum review scorecards as we looked at each of the publishers' resources. And then the project team was charged with providing feedback and guidance for the cadre work. We reviewed the position paper, best practices, and world language standards. We expanded our cadre in September of this year, adding new teachers so that they could join us in the pilot of materials. And then these teachers participated in the curriculum pilot from September until now. You have heard from cadre members explaining describing their experience and their recommendations for what they think we should move forward with as far as our adoption goes. And then we have had some listening sessions on the project team side to hear from cadre members, September through December. And then this is tonight, December 7th, 2022, we have our vote. And then after that, we will have our board recommendation at the board meeting on January 17th. Then we hope to hear back from the board by February 27th. And then PD planning begins, and we roll out PD for our teachers, and we purchase materials. And in September, we offer PD for new teachers and ongoing support for all of the world language teachers in our district. So that's kind of what the timeline looks like. And we've come a long ways. So it's pretty exciting. All right. And let me stop sharing for just a moment so that I can make sure you all have access to these slides. So on one of the slides, you will see this, and there's a link to this and a QR code to this on this slide here. So what you have in front of you there is this flip book that kind of compiles the documents, the essential documents that we've gathered. It's not every single document that the cadre has worked on, but it is most of the essential documents. So we'll be adding as needed or revising this as needed, but for now you have access to this. So this pamphlet is going to include an introduction to the QCC, our project team, our cadre and project team members. It has the timeline in it. It has a link here to the landing page, the BSD website landing page for our adoption. You'll have the position paper in here, the best practices for world language instruction. You'll see the pilot team, all of our scorecards, the unit comparison for Spanish, since that was one of the hardest decisions as far as which publisher to go with. And then you'll see student feedback, teacher survey and comments. You'll see the documents with links for public review. Those pages will actually take you to the document, the Google Drive documents that have all of the live links on them. And then the project team vote is on the last page, although it's incomplete because that's our work tonight. So as you flip through this, you'll see you've probably become very familiar with these things over the last year and a half. So it's all in here. And I am going to flip through a few pages, but then I'm going to ask how comfortable everyone feels already with this information, or how much time you want to spend with this information. So you see the pilot team there. All of our scorecards are here. I'm going to flip through those pretty quickly. There's a lot of them, all the curriculum that we reviewed. And then you have student comments on Vista and Wayside for both Spanish and French. You have teacher comments and teacher feedback here. You have a curriculum review side by side of Wayside, and there's a Cengage is in there as well. And then the links for public review. And anytime you see this at the bottom, you can go straight back to the table of contents. And those are the public review documents. And this is where we're at tonight. So I'm going to stop sharing and then ask if you need a few minutes to take a look at this, just kind of a review in your head.
Aaron, 2 questions. How many minutes you were thinking that we can use, and where again we can find that?
I have about 10 minutes planned out for that. And I will drop the link to the flip book in the chat.
Great. I just put it right there.
Perfect.
Do you want us to look at like the student comments? I mean, I guess before we go down to this road, how much sway does this party have versus the teachers have already made up their minds? Because I'm looking at some of the students' comments right now, and I really would like to look at those. So
Yeah, I mean, and as a team, depending on, I know not everyone has been able to be here for all of the project team meetings, so that's exactly why I'm asking how much time you need, because there is, some have been here for all of the meetings and feel like I've already looked at the student comments, I've already looked at the teacher comments, I'm like ready to go. and others would like a refresher or go back and look. So I did put a slide in for a 10-minute window here you can take a break, or you can just, dig through some things. And then we'll come back and kind of give a big picture overview of what the cadre's conclusions were as you come back.
But basically, our charge is to vote, like we'll vote at the end. So basically you'll be asked, like, do you approve, for the ones that only have one choice, do you approve that we use that and that, or recommend those? And then for the ones that there is a choice, which one did you prefer? Vista or Wayside is pretty much.
Carol,
the
I think 10 minutes is not enough. I'm sorry. I don't know how much time everybody's willing to take, but I feel like I need a 20 minutes, the double 20 minutes, just to do not rush, to see everything, to have an educated decision. But I maybe it's just I'm me the only one. I'm not sure. Maybe what the rest can feel.
How about
Is there a decision to be made after this tonight? Like this is it, or is there more conversation?
So there's
guys
more
are-
conversation. Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Carol.
So after whatever we decide as far as the amount of time we need right now to look through this, after that, we'll come back and we'll do a sort of a big picture. This is what the cadre's conclusions were and why. So I think that will also help. And then we'll go from there. And you'll have more time to ask questions and things too. So
But the vote is tonight, like this is.
the vote
this
is tonight, yes.
No pressure.
And just make it
No
clear, you
pressure.
are voting and making a recommendation to the board, and ultimately the board makes approves the curriculum. And
The
welcome,
only,
Dr. Perez. We have a board member here. Gracias.
Hi,
Thank you for
Karen.
being here.
the only concern I had that you guys may have talked about a long time ago was that one of these decisions impacts middle school teachers, and that middle school teachers did not have a chance to look through this content. Right. So, but I know that you guys have probably talked about it.
So middle school teachers have all had the same access as everyone else as far as.
But not to
the-
teach with it, right? Not to pilot with their kids, right? Not to have chance.
We only had one cadre member last year, Kessa. She was
Okay.
our middle school representative. Actually, this year,
We have
Um,
Emily.
Emily is our
okay,
middle
I forgot.
school representative.
Okay.
And she's been piloting Wayside, but she also had access to the Vista content since she was the only person at middle school doing the pilot. So she was able to kind of dip into both and look at those for us. So
I have a quick question. Was it that she was the only one interested in doing it, or it was not available for middle school teachers to pilot?
no, it was available for everyone, and everyone had teacher access to the resources. Not everyone had the full pilot access, which meant their students were also connected to the Vista or Wayside through Canvas. And that was the one that Emily had for the middle school. And Kessa would have had, but she moved out of the district. She was with us last year. Caleb, did you have a question?
Yeah, for the vote,
Your microphone is really, really soft.
Oh, can you?
I just turned you up on my end. I feel like I can hear you, but
Okay, so you can hear me now? Wait,
we'll lean in.
Will the dual language expansion that Dr. Valderas is talking about, will that impact in different languages? Will that impact this at all?
Not for this adoption, for this, for world language right now. But yeah, it won't have an impact on the adoption process for world language, because a lot of the world language courses we have are at the high school level. But yeah, in the future, as we start expanding dual language programs, we'll have to start looking at, looking at pathways and looking at where students are coming from, K-12, and what level of proficiency they're coming into the different levels with. Because if you start a lot in elementary, then you have a lot of speakers of that language going into middle school, and then that would impact, middle school would impact high school. So there is definitely impact, but for this particular adoption.
I'm wondering if it would be helpful for just like this slide that's a little bit later on of the overview of the choices. If we did that before we were looking through all of the things, I don't know if it would just sort of condense it a little bit, or is
Yeah,
it too
Caleb's
leading?
question is, yeah, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question, Caleb. They are separated on the form by language.
Carolyn, Toshko, what do you think about like just doing the overview of the different curriculums, sort of the one that's later on? First,
The
before
cadre?
people look,
The cadre.
yeah, what we've gotten from the cadre overview kind of thing before we look at all of the documents, so that, because it's an awful lot. Because we look at it often, whereas, I don't know, is that too leading?
Yeah, I think why we did it this way so that the project team can have their background knowledge before listening to the cadre and then making their decisions, but fine either way, whatever everybody wants to. Do you guys want to hear what the cadre considerations were, updates on that before you dig deep into? Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up and yeses. Okay, why don't we go ahead and shift to that?
Let me
I'm
hold,
gonna,
hold on to that one.
and I think that is me, right? Yes. So we do actually have some good news in the for the Mandarin Chinese. Vista came out at the right time with new curriculum for Chinese. For Chinese Mandarin. And so Yun Cheng, who is our only Mandarin teacher in our district, was able to do a review of that curriculum, sent in a review to us. And so just so you know, that is going to show up in your in the voting as an option for Mandarin Chinese. We don't have any other information, right, Carol, on that, like any presentation that they can look at?
So Yin Cheng filled out another one of the scorecards. So we have the curriculum scorecard. And then he also sent a little summary of, why he feels like it's going to make more sense to go with Vista. And then we, as a project team, have all the background of having seen what the Spanish and French teams have used as far as the Vista resources. So what Vista is offering is all of those resources, but now also for Mandarin Chinese.
Yeah, and I think it also has a lot of the authentic text, pretty much everything that the other languages have, which is very, very good. The other two for ASL, we looked at information around signing naturally, which is what the cadre is recommending, signing naturally. And then for Japanese, it is adventures in Japanese. So all of that information, the scorecard, the student comments, as well as the teacher comments are all included in that flip book. All right, where you see a lot, so I'm going to get to Spanish and French because this is probably where there's going to be a lot of differences between Vista and Wayside. And I really appreciate, I had the opportunity to rewatch a lot of the videos, look at all the presentations for both Wayside and for Vista. And I really appreciate the teacher comments around the strengths of each of the curriculum and then areas for improvement. But you'll see that both of them, the Vista and the Wayside, are very, very different approaches to language acquisition. For Vista, for example, you'll see that it's very traditional, and that was actually stated by the presenter and by the teachers that were piloting the curriculum. Traditional in a sense that with vocabulary, for example, vocabulary is front loaded, then students see a dialogue video that is shown, and then students practice the vocabulary, and then students practice, through a conversation. And then the grammar shifts to grammar, and then the grammar tutorial is watched, and then worksheets. Students are able to do worksheets on those grammar tutorials, and then it's individual partner practice. There are authentic videos for higher levels with the Vista curriculum. The difference also that I saw between the two is the flashcards for Vista include, it's actually able to adjust based on, as the students are acquiring and learning the vocabulary. Whereas when you look at the Wayside curriculum, even in its design, it doesn't just start out with all the grammar up front. It doesn't start out with, with alphabet. It really has grammar and vocabulary that are embedded. And Edward, I really appreciate a lot of your thinking as you were aligning the curriculum to the best practices and the position paper. With Wayside, you also see that the grammar and vocabulary are within the lessons and not seen as separate, which is kind of where language acquisition in general is going, as far as not seeing the structures of language, making sure that it's kind of cohesive and within content. It really encourages and draws on students' total linguistic repertoire. And I like what you said about, complex questions. It really lets kids struggle. And when we look at a lot of the brain research, the brain does like to struggle, which helps lead to more acquisition of the concepts. If it's too repetitive and too pattern-based, it doesn't, those synaptic connections are not made. And so the other thing I really appreciated was a deductive approach to Wayside, is what I heard about this curriculum. And I really appreciated the question, what type of approach do we want to teach kids? Is it just front loading the vocabulary, grammar, or really presenting and expecting over time, right, that we'll see the acquisition? So it's very, very different approach. And what we realize is that with both of these, there's a lot of professional development that is going to be needed to get us from, to a deductive approach like that. So my understanding from the cadre, when you look at both types of curriculum, as I mentioned, the approach is very different with Wayside, and yes, you need a lot of PD to get teachers to use the strategies. Wayside is a fairly new curriculum. And there were actually major hiccups with the technology for Wayside. There weren't any hiccups really with the technology piece for Vista. The resources in Vista are farther along. The audio, you also saw that in the comments with the students, where there are audio issues. I mean, there are audio issues in both of them, but for you saw that more with Wayside than you did for Vista. The customer service is definitely better with Vista. So there's a lot of pros and cons with both of the curriculum that we reviewed for French and for Spanish. And so, I think the cadre is probably leading more towards Vista for a lot of the other reasons, that it is going to take a long time for the professional development, technology piece. I even saw comments from the teachers around the grading, the assessment. It was just easier with the Vista. The audio recording for oral language pairing instruction was also better with Vista than it was with Wayside. So anyway, it just seems like Wayside, because it's newer, it just has a lot of work to do to kind of get up to speed with all of the technology pieces and the supplemental materials. And the one thing that we don't want to do is to adopt curriculum where we're going to have to supplement a lot, and it's not going to be cost effective if we're going to have to purchase more supplemental materials and resources. So I think those, Carol, did I sum that up between the Spanish and French? There's a lot more comments in the flip book. So if you wanted to look more deeply into that, you definitely can. But did I miss anything, Carol?
No, I think that's great. I think, I'd love to hear Edward's response to, this particular overarching conclusion, because Edward worked hard with Wayside curriculum in his French classroom.
Yes, you did.
But, I'll give you a moment in a second to talk about that a little bit. But yeah, what Toshiko's saying is also, when we think about this from the teacher perspective, we want to make sure that we're not going to end up with a curriculum that sits on the shelf. That's the last thing that we want to do. So even in our interviews with teachers from other school districts, we interviewed a teacher in Eugene, we've interviewed a teacher we've talked to teachers in Lake Oswego, or West Lynn, and Tiger Tualatin, who also has adopted recently. So as we're researching it and looking out for our teachers in the best interest of our students as well, we have to consider if this is something that's going to just sit on the shelf because we're not ready for it yet, then is that the best use of our funding right now? Or do we meet our teachers where they're at? And do we provide the professional development that's going to move us forward and keep us current with the research that's out there on new approaches and approaches based on the science to language learning? So that's.
Can I just add, Carol, to that point? You know, it even though, you know, Vista might seem, you know, more on the traditional side, what I realized from watching the mini lessons is that it doesn't mean that that's how your teaching could be, right? Like Edward, you said it too, like, even though when you did the activity with the school activity, that was your activity, right? That's not how the book laid it out, but you took the vocabulary and the concept and the idea, the theme, and you made that activity your own activity, which brought in all of those skills and the concepts. And so can you still do that with a traditional curriculum, right? I think you can. It comes down to the instructional strategies and the pedagogical practices. And so if we were able to do some of that PD, even with whatever curriculum you use, the curriculum then just becomes a tool, but the instructional strategies can definitely be developed. And then by the time we're 6 years out for another curriculum, maybe we would be ready for something like Wayside. The other thing I'll mention is that when I checked in with other administrators that have gone through a lot of the adoption process, you could, you know, we could recommend, you know, Wayside for certain groups of students or for certain courses, and Vista for others. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do it for all. We just have to be very careful that if we're recommending adopting curriculum for like Spanish 1 or French 1, that is consistent among all the schools that offer those courses, in case we have students that, you know, travel between schools. So anyway, go ahead, Edward. I want to, if you wanted to say a bit more about your experience.
Yeah, Toshiko, thanks you did a really great job of summarizing. I think there was a lot of things to read through and a lot of time watching the video, I imagine, but I think you did a really excellent job of summarizing. I mean, I came after the last meeting where I made a presentation and Mary Alice made a presentation, and Kim and Claire made a presentation also about just the differences between Vista and Wayside. I mean, I guess I came away from that meeting just noticing how much Vista has, how many different elements are available. And I think that I know that we talk about what's in there for our students, but our students get it from our teachers. And if our teachers are happy, our students are going to be fine. They're going to be like, okay, like, let's do that. Teachers are going to be happier, I believe, with Vista because they have more stuff. They have more, just pull it off and do it. And I found myself, as I was thinking about it, I found myself like I had to create like extra test sections, and I had to modify tests, and I had to come up with new, you know, a little project here or there, you know, which I would do anyway, and which teachers will always do, right? That's what they do. But I do think that in terms of just bang for the buck, I think that we're going to get more from Vista. I think that Vista knows what the research is. Vista knows, and you know, Vista is moving in that direction too, you know. And I think that I think your point that Wayside is a little clunkier, Wayside isn't quite there. I think those are points that in the using of it caused friction, frustration, and like the people at Lake Oswego who decided to not, you know, who said time out, and then their colleagues in Spanish who didn't like it. I mean, that says a lot to me. So if you've got a district where, you know, they adopted Wayside and didn't and don't use it, I mean, that says a lot to me. So and then those who did Vista are excited about it and use it. When Mary Alice did a presentation for our department at Southridge, she used the word love, like, I don't know, like 10 times. I mean, she was excited, you know, she was enthusiastic about it. That's what we want, right? We want teachers to be like, hell yeah, a new curriculum, woohoo, you know, this is fun, you know, and then that comes across in the classroom, right? We want that in the classroom. We want that enthusiasm, that joy of like, hey, we get to do something cool and fresh and new, and versus like, oh, I gotta make it work with this like theoretically better curriculum. Well, no, who cares? You know, like that's not gonna, I think we as a cadre and as a project team, we want the teachers to be like, well done, thank you. You know, that's what we want from our work. I think that's what I want. And I think that's with Vista when it comes to at least French, and I think Spanish as well.
Well said, Edward. I'm glad we're
Thank you,
recording.
Edward.
There we go.
Yes, and we do want our teachers to love the materials because
Yeah.
yes, you're right. The students get the joy of the language through our teachers. So thank you for that.
I took my 20 minutes when everybody was talking to review everything. So I feel good now.
Also a comment on, like Chris, you were asking about doing a search for words in the documents and the student, you know, surveys and stuff. And I believe that a lot of the comments really do talk about the teachers, like that's the part that becomes evident, that like what works is the teachers.
Well, it's all the words. The students that wrote the word confusing and confusion multiple times for Vista. So that's why I was just wanting to do a word search. You know, that's not going to necessarily say that's right or wrong, but just that was what I noticed, was that the word confusion was coming up over and over again. So
Yeah, I wonder where that's coming from. And that could, you know, be part of the PD that we offer teachers too. If students are saying it's confusing for one reason or another. It's also new for them to be going through Canvas to get all of their Spanish or the majority of their Spanish resources, you know, and probably just as much as we see the word confusion on the Vista student comments, we're going to see audio quality, or, you know, like there's probably 50 mentions of audio quality on the student comments for Wayside. So, you know, both of them, as far as student comments and teacher comments, it's hard when you read them to even see a clear winner out of the two, because there were so many good things about both.
Chris, and remember the teachers that did the piloting, they didn't get a training.
yeah.
So they were confused how to use the material and figured it out on the way, right? So
Yeah.
that probably will be part of what that was communicated.
Well, yes, and I wouldn't say that they didn't get a training. We had training over the summer that we offered, but it's never enough. I will say that for sure, because our publishers offered training for all of the teachers that were piloting. But yes, so I think now the question is how many more minutes? I think thanks Betsy for throwing that idea out there, because I think that helped. And I don't know at this point how many more minutes people would like to look and review things. Karen?
Well, Toshiko brought up your summary was great, but where is that survey? I mean, sorry, summary. That's the summary that you would share. Is that on the slides?
It's on my notebook. Do you want me to?
It's on your notebook. That's like, I want to look at your summary. That actually sounded pretty good.
Yes, we should write up that summary for sure. We can write it up and put
Yeah,
it.
I can write it up. I
Yeah.
can write it up, Chris. Yeah.
And we can add it to
Great.
the essential documents.
Yeah, but if you look at the, so Juveria just put in the chat as well, that Tiger Tualatin also, the same thing happened with Wayside. They're not using it, but so it's not a surprise to me that you have Lake Oswego and you have Tiger Tualatin that chose Wayside, right? Because when you really do the research and language acquisition and you do the position paper, best practices, yes. And if you really look at Wayside, even just the front few covers, they really do a great job of talking about the theoretical foundations that they use to write the curriculum, which Vista doesn't really have that, right? So very, very different approaches. And so you would expect that, yes, you're going to, adopt curriculum that aligns with the best practice. But I think the usability and for teachers is something to really consider, because we can always take care of that piece with professional development. And so anyway, just wanted to add that in there. Thank you, Javeria, for adding that piece.
Sorry, Karen was going to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question, because both Vista and Wayside will provide us with all the levels that we need, plus heritage for Spanish speaking. Is that correct? That both programs offer all of those things. So all the levels until you get to AP language, and then also heritage for Spanish, because there wouldn't be heritage for French, right? For heritage speakers, right?
There are heritage French speakers in our French classes, but we don't have heritage
but
French.
we don't have enough mass to get to that. Okay. And was the Vista one the heritage one that was like kind of older but really seemed really good? Is that, I'm sorry, am I making sense? Maybe not.
No, you're definitely making sense. I know our teachers have more experience with Galeria and they're using Spanish Lit Comp.
Okay.
And that has been around for a while through Vista. So yes, it might seem like that something that's been around for a while. They're pretty happy about it, happy with it. So, if you talk to our teachers over at Aloha who've been using it for quite a while, they're really happy with Galeria. We did have Lucinda present on Tejidos, which was the Wayside version for the upper levels. And like Toshiko said, maybe at the upper levels, there's more flexibility as far as what we could use. Even if, a few years in, we're thinking, well, let's have somebody pilot, something of that, I don't know. So, but I think for now, the consistency is going to be important too, across the board. We definitely want consistency with our levels 1 through 3. And then I think there's more flexibility with the others because we also have IB, we have AP, and those both Wayside and Vista offer books specific to the AP curriculum or content, and not as much IB, but IB also has its own has some textbooks that schools could decide they want to use for their IB courses. So there is some flexibility, but as far as what we're talking about at this adoption is doing the what's consistent across the district. And then that's what we're adopting. And if there's variations by school, it's because we have IB, AP, and other classes, and dual language and heritage.
Could I ask a question, please? And I'm hearing a lot of support for Vista, which I have no interest in, putting a stop to sort of what the consensus, the building consensus seems to be. So this is not a challenge question, but I'm a little bit troubled, and I'd love for somebody to kind of talk me through this idea that Wayside has the backing of research and science and approaches to language instruction, but it's not as user-friendly. I'm hearing that it's not as user-friendly. It doesn't have the tech support. I'm hearing a lot of really good reasons why, if I were still teaching, I would want to use Vista. So I understand that. I guess what I want to clarify is whether Vista will be user-friendly if a teacher is using the most commonly viewed best practice to teach their class, will that teacher still find that Vista is user-friendly? And what I worry about would be, if those who are currently practicing language teaching, and I am not, and it's been a while, so I feel rusty and maybe not an authority to say this, but will it be keeping people in a style of teaching that people who study this know is not a great style of teaching for true language learning? So that's a question. And I feel like it is a resource, and it does not, I think Edward said this, it doesn't necessarily dictate what the teacher does, right? The teacher is still the teacher and has the power to teach with best practices. But will this be a tool for best practice? That's, I guess, the question. And does it seem like it has longevity, which is kind of related, but not necessarily? Does it seem like a book that people are, I mean, I know we can't all look into the future, but does it seem like it's open-ended enough that it won't necessarily feel outdated in a few years? So those are two different questions, but I don't know if somebody can maybe help me wrap my head around the first one in particular.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. We've talked a little bit about this just in our approach to teaching language, because really, as a Spanish teacher, my approach to teaching languages very much matches the Wayside approach to teaching languages. So for me, even starting out this process, like, there was a lot of me that just wanted to say, I wish I could just throw my opinion out there from the beginning and bring everybody on board and say we should go with Wayside, like that for me is how I teach. And it's also how I learned, how I learn languages in general. And so, and then looking at our best practices and thinking the philosophy totally matches what we're saying in our best practices. It matches what we're saying in our position paper. And so why wouldn't we go with this? But at the same time, if the support hasn't been there, like, I did my dissertation on the input and output and and crashing and all of that, so as far as but not everybody has, and we have a lot of teachers who have been teaching for many years, and that some of the research, I don't think we're all on the same page as far as the research goes, because we haven't had the PD that we need as language teachers across the district to be where we need to be as far as what's out there. And I think it's going to take a while to get there. And I don't know if it's fair to ask teachers to be there when there's nothing to support getting them there. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess my question I get that Vista it supports how teachers are teaching now, for better or worse, right? And I know we have a lot of really strong teachers in the district, so that's not, please trust me, it's not a knock on teachers, but I'm just hearing that there's a shift in thinking about how language learning is done best, right? Yeah. So will Vista support teachers in doing those best practices? That's really the essential question, I guess.
Yeah, so I can, I have both of the curriculum here. And even if you just look at the chapter 1 for Vista here, starts out with, conversations around, okay, hi, how are you? Practice introducing yourselves, and it gives you a lot of activities to do that. Now, if we did the activity like what Edward did for his unit, you could create an opportunity, a teacher that's using best practice, right, can look at this chapter and create a whole theme around, okay, we're going to have you introduce yourself, pretend that you're in a different country, and Mountainside is that different country. Think of different people that you want to introduce yourself to. You create your introduction, and then we're going to take a field trip around the school and you're going to introduce yourself. So it's more like, okay, you're taking the unit, you're taking the chapter here, but you're creating some type of activity that's more thematic. And you're still kind of getting at that, but you're doing it in a very, very different way, which really lands on the pedagogical practices that you would want, right? Versus just sticking to, okay, I'm going to follow this book and I'm going to practice orally within the classroom. But when you're able to kind of use the skills that they're wanting you to acquire outside and in different ways, I think that's how you would bring this to life. So there are ways, it's a tool, but there are ways to do it, like the Wayside is wanting to do it. It's going to take a lot of professional development on the part of us here. to,
And I can speak from
do that.
experience. I also used Vista when I was teaching Spanish at Sunset. And so I have experience using Vista and the VHL resources, the online resources. And yeah, just like Toshiko was saying, that it definitely, it gives you the framework, and then you can take it where you want to from there. And that is exactly where the PD would come in from there, because I would take it from a clothing unit to, you know, we're all going to do a flea market and we're going to act it out. And it's going to be something, you know, like those are going to bring it into those best practices that we're talking about, where all learning is social and where kids need to be interacting. And the PD has to focus on that. And we've talked about focusing our PD really on that. Learning is social. How do you get your kids talking? How do you get your kids up and moving around? But this would provide the framework with enough resources to pick and choose from, because it's not so linear. It's really, there's a lot that you can pick and choose from to really make it meaningful for students. So definitely some PD required to get us as teachers to the next level.
But I appreciate the observation, Rebecca, and the question. Yeah. Really good question, which is probably why the other districts, I'm sure, you know, landed on that.
For sure. Lots of questions. Karen, do you want to go first?
Sure. Buenas noches. I just I'm thinking about the adoption process, and I'm actually exhausted just thinking about our teachers having to use Vista. Like, I'm exhausted just thinking about all that we just said they have to do to make this work within their classrooms.
Yeah.
With my teacher hat. And financially, I'm wondering, so from the board perspective, like, we fund the adoption. I'm thinking we need to make sure that when this is put out, we say we also need to fund parallel the professional development, because if we say we go with this adoption and we're not funding the professional development, this is not going to help students, right? Or our teachers. And then I'm thinking about all these comments, you know, about what isn't working. And I'm thinking about, how are we already planning our professional development? How are we doing cadres so that our staff gets the material and they're working in teams, so that when we think about the money needed for professional development, it's actually teams of people working on this for the first couple years, and that then we have something for new teachers to have as they come into the district. I'm also thinking about, can we adopt in phases? Like, can we, I don't know if the district allows or the board allows, I don't know how this all works, but can we adopt this in phases? So like, can we get the materials that they need on year one to start while Vista's still figuring out and changing systems, and then we adopt the next part the next year? I don't know if that makes sense, or if that's going to be more confusing for our staff not to have all the materials they need to start off with. But I am concerned, like, for our staff, like, I just think of, like, if I put my dual language teacher hat on, I'm like, great, we got another adoption where I have to spend hours getting the materials ready to really use this in my classroom, instead of like, great, I have the materials I need, you know. So I'm just wondering about those parts.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, I think we typically will always add the PD as part of the adoption process. So that would happen. You would see that as in a board packet, you know, broken down into, this is the curriculum, this is what we're recommending, how much it costs, and then this is what it would cost for PD.
But also the thing
the
with
adoption
PD,
phases. What was that?
well, the other part with PD is just that the current situation is that even if
We
we
can't
have
do
the money
PD
for
during the-
PD, we can't do it. So having a curriculum that's a little bit easier for teachers to use without so much PD
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
Yeah,
is-
you just
is
talk
a
to Paul,
consideration.
talk to Paul Hampton about that, and he'll tell you right up front that will sweep the feet underneath this entire adoption. Because
The PD piece, yeah, because the science, I
because
think,
he
is hurting right now, right?
Yeah, we're struggling right now, and the fact that with the science adoption, the integration, to be quite honest, blows. And yet we were sold gold, and we're getting lead. So definitely buying a product that is going to be almost like bolted on and easy to go is definitely something, because if you can't have the PD, because we don't have subs or whatever, because we don't know what next year's gonna look like, right?
Yeah.
Although I don't want to live in fear either, right? So
And we do have a lot of teachers already using Vista. We don't have anyone already using Wayside except for those who piloted.
So it'll be an easier transition.
As far as just nuts and bolts of, I already know how to log in, I already know how to, use the materials, nuts and bolts wise, and some extended years of experience, when we look at Aloha, for example, who's been using Galeria for a long time. So let's see, Sean was next, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I have a couple of comments. And I'll piggyback on one thing that Chris just talked about, which is iQuest, because I'm someone who half of my day is teaching middle school science. And we had this iQuest adoption, and it's very much based around kids having really rich conversations around science after, being at home for a year and a half in the pandemic and still not readjusting. And I guess my feeling, but as someone who's taught longer than maybe a brand new teacher, is I feel like it's easier to start with something simple and do the training to build off of it and your own professional development and knowledge to build off of it, rather than to have something. If I had to be out sick for 3 weeks with iQuest, I couldn't leave the textbook and expect a sub to, and that's science, it's not world language. But I talked to seasoned science teachers who are saying, I'm spending my whole prep figuring out how to teach this lesson because they've been, anyway, that's a thing about I think we want the rich conversation and the progressive methods, and that should be our end goal, but maybe starting with something that might look a little bit more traditional could be good. That's just my 2 cents. The other question I had a question though, because it's brought up a couple times, like maybe choosing something else for the advanced levels of French or Spanish. Is that something we're voting on, or we're just making like a block suggestion, like Vista for French, and then the cadre might go, well, we'll go with this for the lower levels and this for the advanced levels. I guess I'm a little unclear on that.
It's definitely an option. And I think we built part of that into the voting, into the
Our voting or the cadre.
No, you'll vote on either Vista or Wayside, for example.
Okay.
There is a section for comments at the bottom. So you could say, I also think it would be fine to do this if you decided at the upper levels. Like there's a space where you can add those comments, but we will be voting on one or the other for each language, by language. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Caleb?
Yeah, I also had 2 questions, but I'll try to make it really quick. So the first one was just with the audio. I think like for Wayside, lots of the students had said they had problems. So from the teacher perspective, were those problems like limited to, or large enough to an extent that like students couldn't really complete the homework? And so like Wayside at any level would kind of not be able to, like teachers couldn't rely on the audio when they're doing instruction.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So even if you say for the upper levels, the audio is still an issue.
So we talked to the Wayside folks at the World Language Conference, and the reason that they were like that is because they tried to do authentic conversation. So they recorded people like on the street having conversations, but they did say that they're working on trying to it was a great idea, but that not being able to hear it very well, it was a barrier. We're so used to such polished audio at this point that it got in the way. So I think they're working on it, but
We did listen to some too, just to hear, and there is crackling, or, if they wanted the authentic videos, so then, a student in France recorded themselves saying something, but who's to say that they had the best recording equipment in their home apartment, so it ended up being, it was very authentic, but it was also authentic in the unreliability of the technology. Does that answer your question, Caleb?
Yeah. So I think, or maybe, like for Edward, was he piloting lower level French? Sorry.
Yeah, French too.
Oh, okay. So do you think like doing an upper level French, like the audio wouldn't be a problem, or would it still be?
Personally, I didn't have issues with the audio so much. But I do think that the quality of the Vista materials, the video, even the audio is just, it's professional. I mean, it's very polished. Whether that's authentic or not, we could maybe have a debate about that. I mean, but it's very clear, it's very easy. And so, you know, that's nice. I don't know.
Okay.
Also, it didn't seem like, Caleb, that like from even the student comments or like what we said, but maybe I could be wrong because I didn't listen to it, that the audio wasn't high quality, but it wasn't like you couldn't understand it. It was that, you know, it was crackly and didn't sound as good. Am I right in that understanding?
I think I'm trying to remember who made this presentation, but there was somebody who played something for us from Wayside that wasn't comprehensible at all. And that's certainly something that they should fix. But in my experience, it was understandable. It just wasn't polished like Vista was.
Okay, thanks. And then my other question was just, I noticed there were like a few student comments on how the Wayside curriculum felt overwhelming. So from like the more theoretical perspective, would that be as a result of like having the more traditional approach, and so it's just a new type of learning that they're not used to? Or is it just like the curriculum is inherently just overwhelming to students?
Very good question, Caleb. Very, very good question. Because if you're a world language teacher and you're used to receiving language instruction through the traditional method, and then when you're boom, here's a new way, right, of language, learning language, that could potentially be it. Great observation. Yeah.
I think your question is very appropriate, Caleb, because we have to consider that many schools has huge class size while learning a language. So having a program that at least provides the structure, the teacher can modify, the teacher can, with a PDs, like Carol was saying, in the future we can teach and work with the teacher with a new tendencies or new approaches, but at least the program is there, the structure is there, right? And all these huge classes is hard to be accountable with everybody, you know, at the same time. So not all school has small classes, right? Sizes. So that's something also to consider. The amount of workload, the amount for the students to work on their own or directed or small groups. So that will be part of the PD that I would think it will help, you know?
Man, I will say to this group, before you all came on, I was telling Toshiko and Betsy, I was like, this is my ideal response from the project team, that they would, you know, say this, but also give us a charge of like, let's move forward, let's think bigger, let's be building on this. Where do we go from here? And honestly, like this conversation is just like the just realization of that dream of mine, to have like this project team really just not only say, all right, we'll just, you know, we'll do whatever, but to have a project team that comes together and says, this isn't it for our kids. You know, we have to go to the next level for our students. We have to figure out how we can get from where we're at currently and move forward. So thank you. This is a dream come true as far as the conversations that we're having on this team. So thank you. So speaking of where do we go from here? Do we want more time looking at things? Do we want more time talking about things? Do we want to just go straight to the vote and call it an evening? How's everybody feeling? I should just throw a quick poll out there, but maybe just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to just go to the voting process, and then we'll come back after we vote to just talk about next steps real quick. Karen could go either way. All right, lots of thumbs up. It's like
Oh yeah, that's right.
majority
She doesn't vote. She can't vote.
here. Oh,
Both
no.
parents can go either way. We're both going like this. I copied her.
You got both parents. Okay. All right, great. Then I can put the link in the chat if I can get back to it again, but you also have it in your slides.
And I think Karen Muller asked about the heritage, as you're putting that in, the heritage speakers. And I was reading through and it says like, there isn't a lot in the Vista for heritage speakers, but we'll do a supplement or something in supplemental materials for them. For heritage speaking courses. Is that something that you already looked at? Like there's materials for that somewhere else? Or when we say we'll get supplemental materials, we adopt and then we get supplemental materials? Is that how it works?
Both Vista and Wayside have resources for heritage speakers. It's not, one of them they do have resources. Sorry. I'm just going to say they do have resources it's not like we have to supplement outside of the publisher.
Okay.
Yeah. I would supplement as a teacher anyway, but I think as
Galeria supports levels 1 and 2 and 3 of heritage speakers, and there isn't a lot for heritage speakers. Teachers would need to supplement. And there's specific.
Are you asking that or saying that?
I think she's reading off. Yeah, that was a comment, right? That was, I think that was a comment from one of the presenters or the teachers from that. Was it Lucinda that's doing the heritage? Yeah.
Well, and actually, didn't we talk about having like maybe, then I guess this could go in the comments too, like where maybe like even like libraries, classroom libraries to supplement, like.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's what they meant. Yeah, you would have to have some authentic texts or classroom libraries.
Yeah.
Lucinda shared with me that she was more interested in Wayside for heritage purposes, but if it was more of the world language, then. But when she was thinking more of a heritage class, that it would be the Wayside was her preference.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to add one more comment to consider. We're talking about adoption of a curriculum. Somebody mentioned the PD that has to be involved in the budget. I would consider also more staff to permanently stay supporting teachers for several years, not just a PD one time and boom, you're on your own. Because right now, world language teachers are working a lot. And we have a program that we have been using for 20 years probably, and we're still working a lot. So if we're gonna have a new adoption, new PD, new way to use the material, have also staff that stay longer supporting those teachers along the way, year after year. There is a lot the teacher have to do in the world language, material-based, resources-based, even new strategy you have to use with this program. So just consider that. Thank you.
Gracias, Giselle. Yeah, that would also be good to add in the comments too on your form. Carol, were you able to, the form wasn't working? Oh, you did. You already corrected it?
I think it was for outside.
Oh, okay. Email address.
I can.
All
I have a question about there's a question about Chinese adoption, and then there was some discussion about Vista. Are we saying yes to what's in there for Chinese, and then Vista is going to come along later, or should we just leave that one blank, or what should we do for the Chinese one?
We included the Vista, the Chinese Vista scorecard and everything in the flip book, right, Carol? And it should also be in the on the form, the Google form that you'll fill out to vote. So you would choose between the first one that we saw and then Vista under Chinese.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I see it now. Oh, I'm sorry. I see that. Okay, for Japanese. Got it. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yep.
Japanese and ASL are the only ones where the cadre had one sure choice.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I was just kind of double checking as I was going through the Google form, just trying to align the pages of the packet you gave us to see what that information was.
Yeah. And Chris, that'll be a nice heavy lift in the fall for Japanese. But you know what? we'll figure it out. And
Wait,
that's
was it Japanese or the Chinese that we were dealing with the most?
Well, it's the same company that
Oh,
that
it's the same company.
Mhm.
Okay, we're being recorded, so I'm not gonna say anything.
Good plan. All right, we'll give everyone a moment. I'll keep my mic off. Oh, sorry, Karen.
I can't remember what we said about I listened, but the Mandarin Chinese one, there were two options and there was one that was recommended more highly than the other from the teacher.
Yeah, so when the Japanese and Chinese teachers came to present, and it was really just our Japanese teachers that were able to make it to the project team meeting, they presented that the Cheng and Sui resources were going to be the best resources for Japanese and Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. And then on November 10th, Vista released Mandarin Chinese Journeys. And so now that brought another solid contender in for us. So then I went back to Yinsheng, our only Mandarin Chinese teacher, and asked him to do a second review, fill out the curriculum scorecard, and then determine between the two what he felt would be a better resource for the students. And based on what we know about Vista and all the resources available, and the fact that that is going to be the case for the Journeys curriculum as well through Vista, his recommendation, Yinsheng's recommendation, was to go with Vista over the Cheng and Sui. And I think Chris would concur that the seamlessness with Canvas is going to be a lot better with Vista than it would be to have another language using Cheng and Sui for their content.
Thank you.
So given that fact, that does not exist on here.
What doesn't exist?
Does it say that?
It should.
Oh, there it is. I see it. I see
Yeah,
it for the Mandarin Chinese.
Mandarin Chinese.
Thank you. No, I see it. Yeah.
I
Um,
have one more question. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt. You good? Okay. I have one other question that I think is part of the project team purview, but if it's not, if it's just school board, then just let me know. But is there a dramatic cost difference between the two programs? Because that also comes into play, right? So the cost of Vista versus the cost of Wayside, do we know, do we have any information related to that? Just trying to check all the boxes to think about beforehand. So,
yeah, let me go dig through my documents. I don't know if I have a side-by-side
yeah, sorry to put you on the spot for that too, but I'm just
Thought it was comparable the last time we were looking.
Yeah, I think so too.
It was pretty comparable for the amount, and it seemed like Vista had much more for the money.
okay. I mean, that's what I was just trying to get a sense of. Just knowing whether oh, this is awesome and it costs $100,000 more, or lots more, then it might make a difference. But if they're comparable, then thank you.
From a process standpoint, when it's presented to the board, all the options are not presented, right? It's a recommendation.
Yeah.
And so if it were cost prohibitive, then we would go back to reconsider other options anyway, right?
Yeah, we would have to bring back the project team.
So it seems like it would be better, I guess, from my perspective, to not worry about cost and to go with the one that we think is going to serve students the best. I don't know. That's just my thinking. But that's a process question that I'm maybe not sure about or don't have all the answers to. So.
No, I think you're right. I don't think we brought that into this process before we made the recommendation. All right. Are we all voting? Are we all? Oh, go ahead, Betsy, sorry.
Yes, we are all voting.
Okay.
I'll let you know when everybody has voted, because I think we need everybody, right, to have a quorum.
Yeah. 12. Yeah, I think we have, if everybody votes here, we have more than a quorum, so.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if anyone needs more time. I feel like I've seen.
There's two more two more.
Two more.
Unless, but we do have a quorum, but there's two people who haven't voted yet in this space.
Okay.
Oh, now just, oh no, now we got everybody. Ding, ding, ding.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, awesome.
All right. So really the only thing left is Betsy, take it away. And then Toshiko will wrap us up.
Well, I'm kind of wondering, like, to go off script here. Do we want to show the results? Because they're kind of interesting to see. Are we allowed to do that?
I actually think I gave everybody access to the results.
Oh,
I
cool.
think you could even go in yourself and see the results. But I'm happy to share those. But it would take me a minute to get back to the right screen.
I have, okay. I have mine open if you.
Oh, go for it.
Okay. I don't have to read through all the comments, but just kind of fun, the graphs. Oops. So this is the do you approve world language and position paper? Unanimous. Best practice, unanimous. I can guess who that red spot is. Sorry, should I be reading it? I think you guys can see okay. It's big enough, right?
One person who voted yes on that may have not dealt with the frustration.
Well, yeah, I figured that this had to do with the frustration with the technology. Am I right, Chris?
Oh, it wasn't just technology, it was personality, support, you name it.
I think they have a new person, just saying. Yeah, this was interesting too. But otherwise, unanimous.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for all the comments too.
Thank you.
Take a look at this.
Yeah, well, I don't think everybody wants to see those, but you know, a
No,
lot of what we just talked
yeah.
about is what's there, so. All right, Carol, you want to show the slides? I don't know that we really need them. We're just gonna wrap up.
No, okay.
So thank you, everybody, for all the work and being here and paying attention. So the next steps in the process is that we bring this to the school board. And I think Toshiko had some things that she wanted to say.
Yeah, we will definitely be on the January. Oh, there is public review process,
Sorry.
right? As part of the adoption, and then we will have a school board presentation. So we're going to tap into a couple of you to be there with us as we present the recommendation by this team. And then our department will be working to create a professional development plan for the spring, as well as whatever we can do, the summer, as well as going into the fall. So there will be robust professional development, definitely, for the curriculum that is adopted by the board.
And that public review, basically that flip book that we have, so that will be on the website, the district website, so the public can review all of that work. So that's a lot of that. Carol did all of that, and it's like that's what the main reason for that.
So I cannot believe it. Somebody put in the comments, we did it. So I just wanted to give ourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much. So I'm going to just kind of formally wanted to thank everybody. So on behalf of the multilingual department, Carol, Betsy, myself, I'd like to take this opportunity really to express our deep gratitude for your time and dedication to this important work. Specifically, want to thank you for the countless hours that you spent with us these past couple of years. And for some of you are actually served on both the cadre and the project teams, which we understand is a huge commitment. So thank you so much for your time. Would like to thank the pilot members. So those of you who actually pilot the curriculum, Thank you for your willingness to start the year off with the new curriculum to help inform the process. We know how disruptive that could be for any teacher. So thank you for your engagement and for your reports and the presentations. It was just nice to see how all of that came together. Also, the time that it took to develop the position paper and best practices. Writing a position paper, if you haven't gone through that process, is it's not an easy task. You know, you got to research, interpret the findings, synthesize the information, and then wordsmith the document. So it's pretty laborious and time intensive. So thank you for that. Would like to thank Carol and Betsy, and then Emily is not here, but you know, she started helping with this work last year. Thank you for your time in organizing and preparing for these meetings and for leading the whole adoption process. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. We would not be here at this time of year on track with our timeline without you all pushing us along to get this done. And I do,
and especially Carol, because she had to ramp me up for everything. So it's all Carol. She's like,
yes,
I don't know how many hours she's done to do this, like humongous job.
Creating flip books and all of that. That is awesome. So I do want to just leave you all with this this quote from the position paper, which I think is very, very important, and it really centers our work as world language teachers. And this is just so eloquently written. I love this paragraph. Students see themselves and learn about others by engaging in human connections beyond what might be common or familiar. They challenge themselves to interact and communicate in new ways using language as a conduit of meaning. As they improve and progress through the language acquisition process, students gain confidence in their own ability to interact with and relate to others. They become more open-minded and develop empathy as they explore cultures and societies within their local communities and beyond. And I don't think people realize that when we're learning a different language, right, we are building the empathy, because when you're able to communicate with others, you're building relationships with them, you're learning about the different cultures, and you're able to relate to them in a different way. And so I love how you folks put in the open-minded and developing empathy, because we want people to know that it's really critical when you're able to communicate with other people. Now, with that, we would like to take this time, as we're talking about students, right, because we all do this work for students. We would like to take the time to celebrate and acknowledge one of our project team students, Caleb. Thank you for your involvement in this project. We appreciate your energy, enthusiasm, questions, curiosity, and your commitment to the team. And we would also like to congratulate you for winning the United States Senate Youth Program Scholarship. So congratulations, Caleb. Just to give you some background, 2 outstanding high school students from each state are awarded a $10,000 scholarship and are invited to attend an immersive leadership program with the nation's top government officials from March 4th to 11th next year. It is an extremely competitive merit-based program where students are selected through a rigorous nomination and selection process with the goal to increase young Americans' understanding of the interrelationship of the 3 branches of government, the caliber and responsibilities of federally elected and appointed officials, and the vital importance of democratic decision-making, not only for America, but for people around the world. And so it's so fitting, such a fitting award and recognition given your involvement with this project, Team Caleb. So thank you so much for your professionalism and your hard work and your dedication to this team. I think you've attended almost every project team meeting this year and last year. So thank you and good luck with your future endeavors.
Thanks so much, and thank you a ton, Ms. Baltazar, for writing the recommendation letter for that scholarship, because I would not have gotten it without your support.
Oh, thank you, Caleb. Seriously, it's been an honor to work with you in this project team. Just we're so proud of you. I'm sure you're proud of all your accomplishments as well. So you'll go on to do great things. Thank you.